As the fetus develops, it can spend up to 70% of its day in the dream state.
Krueger's using Jacob's dreams.
Hi and welcome to another film review. This time I'll be discussing the 1989 horror film A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. The premise of the film is that Alice, having survived Freddy Krueger previously, once again finds herself dreaming about him. Freddy manages to rebirth himself and targets Alice and her unborn son, hoping to influence the child and live through his dreams. Freddy also goes after Alice's boyfriend Dan, along with their friends Mark, Greta and Yvonne. Alice must free Freddy's mother from her resting place in the hope of stopping him once and for all. The film is directed by Stephen Hopkins, who's also directed films I've enjoyed such as Predator 2, Blown Away, starring Tommy Lee Jones, and The Ghost in the Darkness. Unfortunately, I think The Dream Child is a pretty poor sequel. I'd only rank it slightly above Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. One interesting thing I discovered from the special features of my Nightmare on Elm Street collection Blu-ray was that Hopkins was given less time to make this film than any other director in the series, and I think that rushed production really shows. One of my biggest disappointments is the low body count. There are only 3 major deaths of Dan, Greta and Mark, which is a noticeable drop compared to films like Dream Warriors and The Dream Master. The filmmakers later admitted that audiences came to these films to see Freddy dispatch victims in creative and gruesome ways, and I think this sequel just doesn't deliver enough of that. Another issue is Freddy himself. By this stage he talks far too much. The constant stream of one-liners started to get annoying rather than entertaining. During Dan's dream sequence, for example, Freddy rattles off line after line like "Better not dream and drive," "Need for speed," "Fast lane," "Power drive," and "Fuel injection." It felt like they were trying too hard to make him funny instead of frightening. I also never really believed this group of teenagers as friends. During the graduation pool party, you've got Dan the football player, Greta who's focused on modelling because of her controlling mother, Mark who's a comic book fanatic, and Yvonne. They all seem like completely different personalities who, realistically, probably wouldn't be hanging out together. None of them were particularly memorable either. The film also focuses heavily on Alice's pregnancy and themes of body image. Personally, those storylines just didn't connect with me. For me, the weakest part of the film is Mark's death. He's supposed to stay awake and watch over Alice, but instead falls asleep. Freddy then appears riding a skateboard. Mark transforms into a comic book superhero, blasts Freddy with oversized guns, only for Freddy to become Super Freddy in what feels like a Superman parody. He then tears apart a comic book version of Mark to kill him. I honestly laughed at how ridiculous it was. For what's supposed to be a horror film, there wasn't anything scary or threatening about that sequence. Greta's death also didn't do much for me. Freddy force-feeding her until she chokes to death at a dinner party just wasn't particularly memorable. The ending was another disappointment. Amanda Krueger is finally released from her imprisonment and absorbs a Freddy baby back into herself while Freddy's claws burst from her stomach as doors slam around them. It all felt like a pretty weak conclusion, and by this point I think the series had clearly started running out of ideas. There are still a few positives though. The still matte painting and gothic look of Western Hills Mental Asylum are visually impressive, and I liked that they reused the church set from the previous film. Alice's father also gets some welcome character development. In the last movie he was an abusive alcoholic, but here he's attending an AA group and trying to become a better father. He even stands up for Alice when Dan's parents threaten to raise her child themselves, which was a nice change. I also thought Dan merging into his motorcycle during his dream sequence was one of the film's better effects and remains one of the more memorable visual moments. Overall, this isn't one of the entries I revisit very often. Apart from a handful of good visual moments, I think the weak story, forgettable characters, lack of creative kills, and increasingly silly portrayal of Freddy make this one of the weakest films in the series. I'd only recommend it if you're watching the Nightmare on Elm Street films for the first time and want to complete the franchise after finishing Part 4. Well, thanks for listening to my movie review, and have a great day.